Oh, two German shepherds was trapped in a broken wheelbarrow. What baby did next left everyone in tears. What you're about to witness will leave you absolutely speechless. A 5-year-old boy did something so extraordinary that even hardened police officers couldn't hold back their tears. Don't forget to like, share, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days straight in Meadowbrook. Tommy Carter pressed his small hands against the cold kitchen window, watching the water stream down in thick rivers. His breath fogged the glass. Outside, the old barn at the edge of their property creaked and groaned in the wind. "Tommy, come eat your dinner," his mother Sarah called from behind him. Her voice sounded tired. She always sounded tired these days, working double shifts at the hospital just to keep them afloat. Tommy didn't move. His green eyes stayed fixed on the barn. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his chest, like when he knew Grandpa Bob was sad, even when the old man smiled. "Did you hear me, sweetie?" Sarah touched his shoulder gently. "Mommy," Tommy whispered. "Something's crying." Sarah sighed and crouched down beside him. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. "It's just the wind, baby. The storm makes all kinds of sounds." "No." Tommy shook his head, his dark hair falling into his eyes. "It's not the wind. It's scared." From his recliner, Grandpa Bob looked up from his newspaper. The retired police officer studied his grandson with those sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. "What do you hear, buddy?" Tommy turned to his grandfather. "Crying, from the barn, but different crying, like when my chest hurts but I can't tell you where." Sarah stood up, rubbing her temples. "That barn's been condemned for 2 years. Nobody goes near it. It's dangerous, Tommy. The roof could collapse any minute." "But Mommy—" "No buts. You stay away from that barn. Promise me." Tommy's lower lip trembled. He looked back at the window, then at his mother. "I promise," he said quietly, but his fingers were crossed behind his back. Thunder crashed overhead. The lights flickered. Sarah jumped, then laughed nervously. "Looks like we might lose power again." "Bob, can you check the generator?" "Already did this morning," Bob replied, but he was watching Tommy. The boy hadn't moved from the window. "Tommy, come sit with your old grandpa. Tell me about school today." Tommy reluctantly left his post and climbed onto Bob's lap. The familiar smell of his grandfather's aftershave and coffee should have been comforting, but Tommy couldn't stop thinking about the crying. "Mrs. Johnson says I'm too quiet," Tommy said. "She says I stare at things too much." Bob chuckled. "Nothing wrong with observing, kiddo. Best cops are the quiet ones who notice everything." "Is that why you were a good cop?" "Maybe." Bob ruffled Tommy's hair. "Or maybe I just got lucky." Sarah brought Tommy's plate, mac and cheese, his favorite. But Tommy just pushed it around with his fork. The crying was getting louder, not louder to his ears, louder in his chest, in his bones. "I'm not hungry," he said. Sarah felt his forehead. "You don't feel warm. Are you feeling sick?" Tommy shook his head. How could he explain that someone else's hurt was making his stomach twist, that he could feel fear that wasn't his own? "Can I go to bed early?" he asked. Sarah and Bob exchanged worried glances. Tommy never asked to go to bed early. "Sure, sweetheart," Sarah said. "Let's get you tucked in." Tommy's room was small but cozy. Glow-in-the-dark stars covered the ceiling, a gift from Bob last Christmas. Sarah pulled the dinosaur covers up to his chin. "Mommy," Tommy said as she turned to leave. "What if someone really needs help and nobody comes?" Sarah sat on the edge of his bed. "That's why we have police officers and firefighters and doctors, to help people who need it. But what if they don't know? What if nobody hears them?" Sarah smoothed his hair back. "Then God sends angels to help. What if God sends a little boy?" Sarah's eyes glistened. She kissed his forehead. "Then that little boy would be very brave, but he would also need to be very careful and never go into dangerous places alone. Understood?" Tommy nodded. Sarah left the door cracked open, yellow light from the hallway spilling across his floor. Tommy lay in the dark, listening. The rain hammered the roof. Wind whistled through the trees, and underneath it all, the crying continued. Not just crying now, whimpering, pain, fear so thick he could taste it in the back of his throat. He waited until the house grew quiet, until he heard Sarah's door close, until Bob's snoring drifted down the hall. Then Tommy slipped out of bed. His bare feet made no sound on the cold floor. He grabbed his little flashlight from his toy box, the one Bob gave him for camping trips they never took. He pulled on his rain boots and his yellow raincoat over his pajamas. The back door squeaked when he opened it. Tommy froze, heart pounding, but no one stirred. He slipped outside into the storm. The rain hit him like cold needles. Within seconds he was soaked through his raincoat. The wind tried to push him back toward the house, but the crying pulled him forward. The barn loomed ahead, a dark shadow against the darker sky. Tommy had never been this close to it. Sarah had forbidden it. The wood was rotting. Holes gaped in the walls like mouths. The door hung crooked on rusty hinges. Tommy pushed through the tall grass, mud sucking at his boots. Lightning flashed, illuminating the barn for a split second. In that moment, he saw movement inside. His heart jumped. "Hello?" he called, but the wind stole his voice. He reached the door and pushed. It groaned open. The smell hit him first. Mold, rust, and something else. Something alive and afraid. Tommy clicked on his flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing piles of old farm equipment, broken. Boards and, there, in the corner, an overturned wheelbarrow, its wooden side splintered and broken. The crying was coming from inside it. Tommy crept closer, his flashlight shaking in his small hand. As he got nearer, he could make out shapes, fur, movement. 2 dogs were trapped inside the broken wheelbarrow. German shepherds, though Tommy didn't know the breed name. He just saw 2 big dogs who needed help. The first dog, smaller with a lighter coat, had her back leg caught in a gap where the wood had splintered. Blood matted her fur. A collar hung loose around her neck. When Tommy's light hit her eyes, she whimpered and tried to pull away, but the movement made her yelp in pain. The second dog, larger and darker, stood over her despite his own injuries. His side was scraped raw, and he held one paw off the ground, but he positioned himself between Tommy and the female, a low growl rumbling in his chest. "It's okay," Tommy whispered. "I won't hurt you." The male dog's ears flicked forward. His growl softened but didn't stop. Tommy set his flashlight on the ground, pointing it at the wall so the light wasn't in their eyes. He sat down in the dirt, making himself small. "My name's Tommy," he said softly. "I heard you crying. I came to help." The female dog whimpered again. Tommy could see her collar had a tag. He squinted in the dim light. "Luna," he read aloud. At her name, the dog's tail gave the tiniest wag. "Hi, Luna," Tommy said. "You're stuck, huh?" That must hurt really bad. The male dog had stopped growling. He watched Tommy with intelligent brown eyes. "You don't have a collar," Tommy observed, "but you're protecting Luna. You're a good boy." Something flickered in the dog's eyes. Recognition? Hope? Tommy scooted a little closer. The male dog tensed but didn't growl. "Someone hurt you," Tommy said. It wasn't a question. He could feel it radiating from both dogs. Not just physical pain, but betrayal. Abandonment. Someone you trusted. Luna whined softly. The male dog lowered his head, still watching Tommy. Tommy noticed something else. Fresh tire tracks in the mud leading to the barn door. Someone had been here recently. Tonight, maybe. "They left you here to die," Tommy whispered, anger flashing through him. It was a feeling too big for his small body. "That's not right." He stood up slowly. "I need to get help. My mom and grandpa will know what to do." But when he took a step toward the door, both dogs panicked. Luna thrashed, crying out as her trapped leg twisted. The male dog limped forward, blocking Tommy's path. Okay, Tommy said quickly. "I won't leave. I'll stay." He sat back down. The male dog relaxed slightly but kept watching him. Tommy looked at the wheelbarrow. It was big and heavy, made of thick wood reinforced with metal. One side had completely collapsed, creating the gap that trapped Luna's leg. Sharp splinters jutted out everywhere. "I can't fix this alone," Tommy said. "I'm too small." But he couldn't. Leave them either. They were too scared, too hurt. Tommy pulled off his raincoat and laid it over Luna, trying to keep her warm. She flinched at first, then seemed to understand he was trying to help. "I'll call you Duke," Tommy told the male dog, "because you stand like the Duke in my storybook. All proud even when you're hurt." Duke's tail moved slightly, not quite a wag, but an acknowledgement. Tommy sat between the 2 dogs, one small hand on Luna's head, the other reaching out slowly to Duke. The big dog sniffed his fingers, then gave them the smallest lick. "We're friends now," Tommy said. "Friends help each other." Thunder crashed overhead. The barn shook. Dust and debris rained down from the damaged roof. Luna whimpered. Duke pressed closer to both of them. "It's okay," Tommy said, though his own heart was racing. "We're okay." But they weren't okay. Luna's breathing was getting shallow. The blood on her leg looked fresh, and Duke kept favoring his injured paw more and more. Tommy knew he needed to get help, but every time he moved toward the door, both dogs panicked. They were traumatized, he realized. Whatever had happened to them, being left alone again was their biggest fear. "I have an idea," Tommy said. He pulled out the small whistle on his keychain, another gift from Bob. "My grandpa gave me this. He said if I'm ever in trouble, blow it 3 times and he'll come running." He looked at both dogs. "But if I use it, you have to trust me. You have to let them help, okay?" Duke stared at him for a long moment. Then he limped over and lay down beside Luna, pressing against her side. Tommy took that as a yes. He brought the whistle to his lips and blew 3 sharp blasts. The sound cut through the storm. Tommy waited, counting his heartbeats. 1, 2, 3, 4. A light appeared in the house. Then another. Tommy could see figures moving. "They're coming," he told the dogs. "Don't be scared." Within minutes, he heard voices calling his name. Bob's deep voice, Sarah's panicked one. "In here!" Tommy shouted. "In the barn!" "Tommy, don't move!" Bob's voice commanded. "We're coming!" Footsteps splashed through the mud. The barn door burst open. Bob appeared first, flashlight in one hand, his old service weapon in the other. Sarah was right behind him. "Tommy!" Sarah cried, starting forward. "Stop!" Tommy said sharply. "You'll scare them!" Bob's flashlight found the scene. Tommy sitting between 2 injured German shepherds, covered in mud and blood that wasn't his own. "Jesus Christ," Bob muttered. "Don't come closer," Tommy said. "They're scared." "Someone hurt them and left them here?" Bob holstered his weapon and held up his hands. "Okay, buddy. We're not moving. Are you hurt?" "No, but Luna is. Her leg's stuck. And Duke's paw is bad." "Duke?" Sarah asked. "I named him. He doesn't have a collar." Bob was already assessing the situation with his cop eyes. The fresh tire tracks, the deliberately overturned wheelbarrow, the way it had been positioned to trap rather than just dump. "Sarah, call Dr. Watson," he said quietly. "Tell her it's an emergency." Sarah pulled out her phone, but Tommy could see her hands shaking. "Tommy, baby, please come here." "I can't leave them," Tommy said. "They think everyone leaves." Duke lifted his head and looked at Bob. There was something in that look, a measuring, an evaluation. "Hey there, big guy," Bob said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you or your friend. I'm Tommy's grandpa. I protect him. And now I'm going to protect you too." Duke's ears swiveled forward. Bob took a slow step forward. Duke tensed, but didn't growl. "That's it," Bob said. "You know I'm okay, don't you?" You can smell it. No fear, no anger, just concern. Another step, then another. Finally, Bob was close enough to crouch beside Tommy. "You did good, kiddo," he said quietly. "Real good, but now we need to help them properly." "They were dumped here," Tommy said. "Tonight, I think." "The tire tracks are fresh." Bob's jaw tightened. In 30 years on the force, he'd seen a lot of cruelty. But something about this, the deliberate nature of it, trapping the dogs rather than just abandoning them, made his blood boil. "Dr. Watson's on her way," Sarah said, finally approaching slowly. 20 minutes. "Luna needs help now," Tommy said. "She's bleeding." Bob examined the trapped leg without touching it. The wood's cutting into her. Every time she moves, it gets worse. "Can we break the wheelbarrow?" Tommy asked. "Not without hurting her more. We need proper tools." Duke suddenly stood, limping to the barn door. He looked back at them and barked once. "What's wrong, Duke?" Tommy asked. The dog barked again, more urgently. Bob stood, hand moving to his weapon. "Someone's coming." Headlights swept across the barn entrance. A vehicle was pulling up outside. "Stay with the dogs," Bob told Tommy, moving toward the door. A car door slammed. Footsteps approached. "Hello?" A woman's voice called. "Is someone in there?" Bob stepped into the doorway, blocking the entrance. This is private property. What's your business here? I could ask you the same thing, the woman replied. Tommy couldn't see her, but her voice was cold, unfriendly. This is my brother's land. Your brother? Marcus Stone. He passed 2 weeks ago. I inherited everything, including this property. Duke started growling, not at Bob, but toward the woman outside. Luna tried to move, crying out in pain. Including the dogs? Bob asked, his voice carefully neutral. There was a pause. What dogs? Marcus didn't have any dogs. Funny, Bob said, because there are 2 German shepherds in here who seem to know this place pretty well. That's impossible. If there are dogs here, they're strays, probably rabid. You should leave before you get bitten. Tommy stood up, anger burning in his chest. They're not rabid. Someone hurt them and left them here to die. The woman, Janet Stone, pushed past Bob to see inside. She was tall and thin, with harsh features and cold gray eyes. When she saw the dogs, something flickered across her face. Recognition? Fear? You need to leave, she said sharply. All of you. This is my property. We're not leaving without the dogs, Tommy said, stepping in front of Luna and Duke. Janet's eyes narrowed. Those dogs are dangerous. They attacked my brother. That's probably why he died. Liar, the word burst from Tommy before he could stop it. Tommy! Sarah gasped, but Tommy could feel it, the lie hanging in the air like smoke. Duke and Luna's fear spiked when they saw Janet. Not aggression, fear. You did this, Tommy said, staring at Janet. You hurt them. That's a serious accusation, young man, Janet said, but her voice wavered. Bob stepped between them. Ma'am, regardless of ownership, these animals are injured and need immediate medical attention. We've called a veterinarian. I don't give permission for that. They need to be put down. No! Tommy screamed. Duke limped forward, placing himself between Janet and Tommy, his growl deep and warning. See? Janet said quickly. Aggressive. Dangerous. He's protecting Tommy, Bob said quietly. That's not aggression. That's loyalty. Headlights swept across the barn again. Dr. Emily Watson's pickup truck pulled up, and the young veterinarian jumped out with her medical bag. Where are my patients? She called. In here, Emily, Sarah answered. Dr. Watson entered, took one look at the scene, and immediately went into professional mode. Everyone except Tommy needs to step back. The dogs seem to trust him. I don't give permission, Janet started. I don't need your permission to provide emergency medical care to suffering animals. Doctor, Watson cut her off. That's state law. She knelt beside Luna, her hands gentle and sure. Hey, sweet girl. You're in rough shape, aren't you? Luna whimpered but didn't pull away. Tommy, can you keep her calm while I examine her? Tommy nodded, stroking Luna's head and whispering to her. Duke watched every move Doctor Watson made. This leg is bad, Doctor, Watson said. Possible fracture, definite infection starting, and these wounds. She looked up at Bob. These are deliberate. Someone beat these dogs. That's speculation, Janet said quickly. No, it's medical evidence, Doctor, Watson replied, and I'll be documenting everything for the authorities. She moved to examine Duke. He pulled back at first, but Tommy put his hand on the dog's neck. It's okay, Duke. She's nice. She helps animals. Duke submitted to the examination, though his eyes never left Janet. Broken toes on the left paw, Doctor, Watson announced. Multiple contusions, possible rib fractures. These dogs have been severely abused. We need to get them to my clinic immediately, she continued. But first, we need to free Luna from this wheelbarrow. I have tools in my truck, Bob said. As he went to get them, Janet pulled out her phone. I'm calling my lawyer. You're all trespassing, and those dogs are my property. Actually, a new voice said from the doorway, that might not be true. Everyone turned. A man in his 50s stood there, wearing a rain-soaked suit. He held a briefcase. Who are you? Janet demanded. James Crawford, attorney. I represent Marcus Stone's estate. Janet went pale. I'm Marcus's next of kin. I inherited everything. You inherited the land and house, Crawford said, but Marcus had a separate will concerning his dogs. A will that was filed just 3 days before his death. What dogs? He didn't have dogs. Crawford pulled out a document. 2 German shepherds, Luna, female, 3 years old, and Duke, male, 4 years old. Both registered service animals. Tommy looked at Duke with new understanding. You're a service dog? Duke's tail wagged slightly. Marcus suffered from severe PTSD, Crawford explained. These dogs were his lifeline. They detected his episodes, provided comfort, even called for help. Then where were they when he died? Janet snapped. According to the police report, they were locked in the garage. Marcus was found in his bedroom. Someone had separated him from his dogs. The barn fell silent except for the rain on the roof. The will states that upon Marcus's death, the dogs were to be placed with the Veteran Service Dog Foundation, Crawford continued, not with family. This is ridiculous, Janet said. You can't prove these are the same dogs. Luna's microchipped, Doctor, Watson said, scanning the female dog with a device from her bag. The chip confirms her identity. What about Duke? Bob asked. Dr. Watson scanned him, frowned, scanned again. There's something here, but it's not reading properly. The chip might be damaged, or tampered with, Tommy thought, though he didn't know why that idea came to him. We need to get them to the clinic now, Doctor, Watson said urgently. Luna's losing blood. Bob returned with bolt cutters and a saw. Working carefully, with Tommy keeping Luna calm, they cut away the broken wood trapping her leg. The moment she was free, she tried to stand, but collapsed. I've got you, girl, Doctor, Watson said, preparing a stretcher. Duke limped over to Luna, licking her face gently. We'll take both of them, Doctor, Watson said. Over my dead body, Janet said. Those dogs are dangerous. They should be put down. That's not your call, Crawford said. As of now, I'm taking custody of them on behalf of the Veteran Service Dog Foundation. Janet's face twisted with rage. This isn't over! She stormed out into the rain. They heard her car start and drive away. We need to move, Doctor, Watson said. Tommy, can you ride with me? The dogs seem to trust you. Tommy looked at his mother. Sarah's face was a mix of fear, pride, and resignation. Go, she said softly. We'll follow in our car. They loaded Luna onto the stretcher and into Dr. Watson's truck. Duke refused to be separated from her, so they let him climb in too, despite his injuries. Tommy sat between them, one hand on each dog. As they drove through the storm toward the clinic, he felt something strange. Not just the dog's pain and fear, but something else. Memories that weren't his own. A man with kind eyes and shaking hands. Marcus. The dogs loved him, protected him, and someone had taken them away when he needed them most. Dr. Watson, Tommy said quietly. I think something bad happened to their owner. What makes you say that, sweetie? Tommy didn't know how to explain the images in his head. Marcus calling for his dogs. The garage door that wouldn't open from inside. The person who locked it. I just know, he said. Dr. Watson glanced at him in the rearview mirror. You have a gift, Tommy. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. They arrived at the clinic, a small building with a bright sign reading, Meadowbrook Animal Hospital. Dr. Watson had called ahead, and her assistant was waiting. Prep surgery immediately, Doctor, Watson ordered. We have 2 critical cases. As they wheeled Luna inside, Duke tried to follow, despite his broken toes. Duke needs to stay with her, Tommy said. They're bonded. Dr. Watson looked at the desperate dog, then at Tommy. You're right. We'll treat them together. The next hours blurred together. Surgery for Luna's leg, x-rays for Duke, Bob calling his old partner at the police station, Sarah pacing the waiting room, Tommy refusing to leave, even when exhaustion made his eyes heavy. The fracture in Luna's leg is severe, Doctor, Watson explained to them. But I've said it. With time and therapy, she should recover full mobility. What about Duke? Tommy asked. 3 broken toes and 2 cracked ribs. Painful, but he'll heal. What worries me more is the psychological trauma. These dogs have been through something terrible. Can you prove abuse? Bob asked. Legally? The injuries are consistent with beating, possibly kicking. And there's something else. Dr. Watson pulled up an x-ray on her computer. See this mark on Duke's chip? They looked at the scan. It's been deliberately damaged. Someone tried to destroy his identification. Why would someone do that? Sarah asked. If you're going to make dogs disappear, Bob said grimly, you don't want them traced back to you. Tommy stood up suddenly. Someone's coming. They all looked at him. How do you know? Sarah asked. Duke told me. Before anyone could respond, Duke started barking from the recovery room. Not a normal bark, a warning. Bob moved to the window. A black SUV was pulling into the parking lot. "Everyone stay calm," he said, his hand moving to his phone. The clinic door burst open. 2 men entered, both large and intimidating. Behind them came Janet Stone. "We're here for the dogs," one of the men said. "The clinic is closed, doctor," Watson said firmly. "We have a court order." Janet held up a paper. Crawford, the lawyer, examined it. His face darkened. "This is an emergency custody order." "How did you get a judge to sign this at midnight?" Janet smiled coldly. "I have friends." "Those dogs are recovering from surgery, doctor," Watson protested. "They can't be moved. That's not my problem." The larger man started toward the recovery room. Bob stepped in his path. "I wouldn't do that," Bob said quietly. "You going to stop me, old man?" "No, but the police might." "We have a court order," Janet repeated. "And I have questions," Bob replied. "Like why you're so desperate to get these dogs. Like why their owner died 2 weeks after changing his will." Janet's face flushed. "How dare you?" "I dare because I spent 30 years as a cop, and everything about this stinks." Tommy slipped away while the adults argued. He went to the recovery room, where Duke and Luna lay on soft beds, both groggy from pain medication. "I won't let them take you," he whispered. Duke's tail thumped weakly. Luna opened one eye. Tommy heard footsteps. The large man had pushed past Bob and was coming. "Get away from those dogs, kid!" Tommy stood his ground. "No! Move, or I'll move you." "You'd hurt a child?" Sarah's voice was deadly quiet from the doorway. The man hesitated. "That's what I thought," Sarah said. "Now get out of my way." She walked past him and stood with Tommy. Bob appeared next, his phone in hand. "My former partner is on her way, Detective Lisa Chen. She has some questions about Marcus Stone's death." Janet's face went white. "We're leaving. Now." "But boss," one of the men started. "Now!" They left quickly, Janet shooting one last venomous look at Tommy. "They'll be back," Crawford said. "That court order is real, even if it was obtained improperly." "Then we need evidence," Bob said. "Fast." Tommy sat between the 2 dogs, his hands on their heads. Images flashed through his mind. Marcus writing something, hiding it, a safe behind a picture. "Mr. Crawford," Tommy said. "Did Marcus have a safe? Behind a picture of mountains?" Crawford stared at him. "How could you possibly know that?" Tommy looked at Duke. "He showed me." The room fell silent. Finally, Crawford spoke. "Marcus did have a safe, behind a landscape painting in his study. But I don't have the combination." Tommy closed his eyes, his hand on Duke's head. Numbers appeared in his mind. "Try 11-23-67. That's Marcus's birthday," Crawford said slowly. "Duke remembers everything," Tommy said simply. It was past 3 in the morning when Crawford returned from Marcus's house. His face was grim. "I found it," he said, holding up a manila envelope. Marcus documented everything. Janet had been trying to get him declared incompetent. When that failed, she started separating him from his dogs, knowing it would destabilize his PTSD. "She killed him?" Sarah gasped. "Not directly, but she created the conditions for his death. The night he died, she locked the dogs in the garage and gave him sleeping pills, telling him they were his regular medication, without his dogs to detect his nightmare-induced episodes. He died alone and terrified," Bob finished. "There's more," Crawford continued. "Marcus discovered Janet had been involved in dog-fighting rings. She wanted Duke and Luna because they are trained service dogs. Their puppies would be valuable." Tommy felt sick. She was going to make them fight? No. Breed them? Then train the puppies for illegal sales. Dr. Watson had been quiet, but now she spoke. "There's something else you should know. Luna's pregnant." Everyone turned to stare at her. "I discovered it during surgery. She's about 3 weeks along." Duke limped over to Luna, nuzzling her gently. "That's why Janet was so desperate," Bob said. "She knew." "We need to get this evidence to Detective Chen immediately," Crawford said. But Tommy wasn't listening anymore. He was staring at Duke and Luna, seeing something the adults couldn't. The dogs weren't just traumatized. They were grieving. They had lost Marcus, their person, their purpose. "They need a new family," Tommy said quietly. Sarah knelt beside him. "Tommy, we can't—" "Not us," Tommy interrupted. "Other veterans, like Marcus. Duke and Luna know how to help them." Dr. Watson smiled. "That's exactly what Marcus wanted. It's in his will. But first, they need to heal," Tommy said, his hand on Luna's swollen belly. "And their puppies need to be born safe." "Janet won't give up," Bob warned. "She has money, connections." "Then we protect them," Tommy said, with a determination that seemed impossible in someone so young. "All of us, together." As dawn broke over Meadowbrook, painting the sky pink and gold, the storm finally passed. In the veterinary clinic, 2 wounded dogs slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, a small boy keeping watch over them. The morning sun streamed through the clinic windows, but Tommy hadn't moved from his spot between Duke and Luna. His eyes were red with exhaustion, but he refused to leave. Sarah had tried 3 times to take him home. Each time, both dogs had whimpered until he returned. "They're scared I'll disappear," Tommy explained to Dr. Watson, who was checking Luna's bandages. "Like Marcus did." Dr. Watson paused in her work. "Tommy, how do you know what they're feeling?" Tommy shrugged. "I just do. It's like when you know it's going to rain because your bones feel different. Except, I feel what they feel." The clinic door chimed. Detective Lisa Chen entered, her sharp eyes taking in everything at once. She was younger than Bob, maybe 40, with black hair pulled back in a tight bun. "Bob," she nodded. "Got your message. Several messages, actually." "Lisa, thanks for coming." Bob stood, shaking her hand. "This is my grandson Tommy, my daughter Sarah." Detective Chen's eyes lingered on Tommy, who was whispering something to Duke. "This the boy who supposedly talks to dogs?" "Not supposedly," Tommy said without looking up. "Duke says you're sad about something about your own dog." Detective Chen went very still. "How could you—" "Duke can smell it on you, the sadness. It's old, but still there." "My canine partner died 2 years ago," Chen said slowly. "Rex, line of duty." Duke lifted his head, looking directly at Chen. His tail wagged once, deliberately. "Duke says Rex was brave," Tommy said. "He says all police dogs know about Rex." Chen's professional composure cracked slightly. She cleared her throat. "Bob, what exactly is going on here?" Bob handed her the manila envelope Crawford had found. "Read this. Then we'll talk." As Chen reviewed the documents, her expression grew darker. "This is serious." Marcus Stone was documenting systematic abuse, not just of himself, but of other veterans in the program. "What program?" Sarah asked. "There's a service dog organization that Janet Stone was involved with. On paper, it looks legitimate, but Marcus discovered they were taking dogs meant for veterans and selling them to the highest bidder." "That's horrible," Dr. Watson said. "It gets worse," Chen continued. "Some of these dogs ended up in fighting rings. Others were bred illegally. Marcus was gathering evidence to expose the whole operation when he died." Tommy suddenly stood up. "Someone's coming." They all looked toward the window. Janet's black SUV was pulling up again, but this time she wasn't alone. 3 more vehicles followed. "She brought reporters," Chen observed. "Smart. Makes it harder for us to refuse her court order." Indeed, people with cameras and microphones were getting out of vans. Janet emerged from her SUV, wearing a conservative suit, looking every inch the grieving sister. "Dr. Watson!" she called loudly enough for the reporters to hear. "I'm here to collect my brother's dogs. These poor animals need proper care, not to be experimented on in your clinic." "Experimented on?" Sarah said indignantly. "Let me handle this," Chen said, stepping outside. Through the window, they watched Chen show her badge, saw Janet's fake concern, the reporters pressing closer. "We need to move the dogs," Bob said quietly. "Now?" "They can't be moved, Doctor," Watson protested. "Luna just had surgery." "They can't stay here either," Bob insisted. Tommy was back with the dogs, his hands on their heads. His eyes were closed, and his lips moved silently. "Tommy?" Sarah touched his shoulder. Tommy's eyes snapped open. "Duke knows another way out, through the basement. It connects to the old storm tunnels." Dr. Watson stared at him. How could Duke know that? Marcus brought them here before, when Janet first started bothering him. He explored while Marcus talked to you. There is a basement access, Doctor, Watson said slowly, but I've never been down there. Outside, Janet's voice was getting louder. These dogs are suffering. This clinic is holding them illegally. We need to go now, Bob said. Dr. Watson grabbed supplies, throwing them into bags. Luna needs to stay horizontal. Her leg... I'll carry her, Bob said. Your back... Sarah. Eights started. I'll manage. They moved quickly. Dr. Watson led them to a door marked storage. Beyond it, narrow stairs descended into darkness. Duke went first, limping but determined. Bob followed, carrying Luna as gently as possible. She whimpered but didn't struggle. Tommy and Sarah came next, with Doctor. Watson bringing up the rear with medical supplies. The basement was musty and filled with old equipment. Duke led them to a rusted door in the far wall. That hasn't been opened in years, Doctor, Watson said. But when Bob tried the handle, it turned. The door opened into a concrete tunnel, part of the town's old flood control system. How did Duke know this would be open? Sarah asked. Tommy didn't answer. He was listening to something only he could hear. We need to hurry. Janet's going to realize we're gone soon. They moved through the tunnel, their footsteps echoing. Luna's breathing was labored. Duke kept looking back, checking on her. After what felt like hours but was probably 10 minutes, they reached another door. This one opened into the basement of an abandoned building 2 blocks away. My car's parked behind the diner, Bob said. I can get it. Come back for you. I'll go with you, Doctor, Watson said, less suspicious. They left Sarah and Tommy with the dogs in the empty building. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light, coming through boarded windows. Mommy, Tommy said quietly, Janet's not going to stop. I know, baby. She killed Marcus. Sarah pulled him close. We don't know that for certain. Duke knows. He saw her put something in Marcus's drink. The night before he died. Sarah's blood chilled. Tommy, if that's true, it is true. Duke doesn't lie. Dogs can't lie. Duke limped over, pressing against Tommy's side. Luna tried to lift her head, whining softly. She's in pain, Tommy said. The medicine is wearing off. Sarah checked her phone. Bob and Doctor. Watson should be back soon. But it wasn't Bob's car that pulled up outside. It was a white van with no windows. Hide, Tommy whispered urgently. They scrambled behind a pile of old furniture just as the door opened. 2 men entered, the same ones from last night. Boss said they came this way, one said. Check everywhere. Tommy held his breath. Beside him, Duke tensed, ready to protect them despite his injuries. The men moved through the building systematically. They were getting closer. Then Luna whimpered, just once, but it was enough. Over there! The men rushed toward them. Duke struggled to his feet, growling. Duke, no! Tommy cried, but the dog positioned himself between the men and his family. Stupid mutt, one man said, pulling out a catch pole. Duke lunged despite his broken ribs. The man swung the pole, catching Duke around the neck. The dog fought, choking, refusing to give up. Stop! Tommy ran out from hiding. You're hurting him! The second man grabbed Tommy, lifting him off his feet. Got the kid? No. Sarah attacked the man holding her son, hitting him with her purse, her fists, anything. He pushed her away. She fell hard, her head hitting the concrete floor. Mommy! Tommy screamed. Duke's fury exploded. Even with the catch pole around his neck, he twisted and bit the man's leg. The man yelled, dropping the pole. Duke immediately went after the one holding Tommy, but his injuries slowed him. The man kicked him in his broken ribs. Duke went down with a yelp that tore through Tommy's heart. Duke! Car doors slammed outside. Bob's voice boomed. Let him go! Bob and Detective Chen burst in, weapons drawn. Put the boy down, Chen commanded. Now! The man holding Tommy hesitated, then set him down. Tommy immediately ran to Duke, who was struggling to breathe. You're under arrest, Chen said, cuffing both men. Assault, attempted kidnapping, animal cruelty. Bob was checking Sarah, who was sitting up, dazed. I'm okay, she said weakly. Dr. Watson rushed in with her medical bag, going straight to Duke. Possible refractured ribs. We need to get him back to the clinic. Janet's still there with the reporters, Chen said. Not anymore, Crawford said, entering with his phone out. I just filed an emergency injunction, and I sent the reporters copies of Marcus's documentation. You what? Chen said. Sometimes the court of public opinion is faster than the legal system. His phone was already pinging with messages. It's going viral. Woman tries to steal dead brother's service dogs. The internet is not happy. Indeed, when they carefully transported the dogs back to the clinic, the reporters were gone. Janet's SUV was nowhere to be seen. She ran, Chen said with satisfaction. Guilty people always run. Back in the clinic, doctor. Watson worked on Duke while Tommy refused to leave his side. 3 refractured ribs, she confirmed. He's going to need complete rest for weeks. He was protecting us, Tommy said, tears streaming down his face. Even though it hurt. Duke's tail wagged weakly. Chen's phone rang. She stepped away to answer, her face growing grim. When she returned, her expression was dark. Janet Stone was just arrested at the airport. She was trying to flee to Mexico. Good, Bob said. There's more. We searched her house. We found records of dog-fighting operations across 3 states. And, she paused, we found evidence that she's been doing this for years. Marcus wasn't her first victim. What do you mean? Sarah asked. There were 3 other elderly relatives who died under suspicious circumstances. All of them had valuable dogs that disappeared after their deaths. The room fell silent. She's a serial killer? Sarah whispered. That's for the courts to decide. But she won't be getting out on bail. Tommy was still with Duke, whispering something. The dog's breathing had steadied. What are you telling him? Dr. Watson asked gently. That he's brave. That Marcus would be proud. That he's a good boy. Duke's tail wagged again. Over the next week, the story exploded across social media. The image of Tommy sleeping between 2 injured German shepherds became a symbol of compassion. Donations poured into Dr. Watson's clinic. Veterans from across the country offered to adopt Duke and Luna. But Tommy wouldn't hear of it. They need to stay together, he insisted. For the puppies. Tommy, we can't keep them, Sarah said gently. They were in their small apartment, Duke and Luna recovering in the living room. We can barely afford rent. Then we need a bigger place. With what money? Tommy looked at his grandfather. You have savings. For retirement, Bob said. Duke and Luna are more important than retirement. Bob and Sarah exchanged looks. The truth was, they'd both fallen in love with the dogs. Duke followed Bob everywhere, despite his injuries. Luna had taken to sleeping beside Sarah's bed. There might be another option, Crawford said. He'd been visiting daily, helping with the legal aspects of the case. Marcus's will includes a provision. Whoever adopts the dogs gets a monthly stipend for their care. And, he paused, he left his house to whoever takes them in. What? Sarah gasped. Marcus had no children. Janet was his only family. He knew she'd try to take the dogs, so he made arrangements. The house goes to the dog's new family. That's... Sarah couldn't finish. It's a nice house, Crawford continued. 4 bedrooms, big yard, perfect for dogs. Tommy looked at Duke and Luna. You knew, didn't you? You knew Marcus would take care of you. Duke barked once, softly. The move happened quickly. The house was indeed perfect. A 2-story colonial with a fenced yard and, ironically, a sturdy barn that had been converted into a training facility for service dogs. Marcus trained other dogs here, Crawford explained. He wanted to help more veterans. Tommy stood in the barn, his hand on Duke's head. We could keep doing it. Training dogs to help people. You're 5 years old, Sarah reminded him. Almost 6. And Duke knows how to train dogs. He could teach me. It sounded absurd. But over the past weeks they had learned not to dismiss Tommy's connection with the dogs. We'd need help, Bob said thoughtfully. Professional trainers. I know someone, Dr. Watson offered. She'd become a regular visitor, checking on the dogs and, Bob suspected, checking on them too. A retired military dog trainer. He might be interested. And so, gradually, a plan formed. They would continue Marcus's work, training service dogs for veterans with PTSD. Tommy would learn alongside Duke, who indeed seemed to understand the training process better than any human. But first, Luna's puppies had to be born. It happened on a quiet Tuesday night. Tommy woke suddenly, shaking Sarah's shoulder. "The puppies are coming." Sarah called Dr. Watson, who arrived within minutes. Luna was in labor, Duke anxiously pacing nearby despite his healing ribs. "She's doing great, Doctor," Watson said. "Tommy, can you keep her calm?" Tommy sat by Luna's head, stroking her ears, whispering encouragement. Duke lay on her other side, occasionally licking her face. The first puppy arrived just after midnight, then another and another. "5 healthy puppies, Doctor," Watson announced. 3 males, 2 females. Luna cleaned her babies with Duke's help, the 2 dogs working as a team. Tommy watched in wonder. "They're perfect," he breathed. "Marcus would be so happy," Crawford said. He'd come as soon as he heard, unable to stay away. "How do you know?" Sarah asked. Crawford smiled sadly. "Because I knew him. We were friends. These dogs were his children, and now—" He looked at Tommy. "Now they have a new family." As the sun rose, Tommy sat surrounded by dogs. Duke and Luna flanked him, the puppies nestled between them. Sarah took a picture, thinking it would be a nice memory. She had no idea that photo would soon be seen by millions. Because Janet Stone had made bail after all, and she was coming for revenge. The first sign of trouble came 3 days later. Tommy was in the yard with Duke, working on basic commands. Duke could barely walk without pain, but he insisted on being outside. Tommy knew because Duke told him, in that wordless way they communicated. "Someone's watching," Tommy said suddenly. Bob looked up from his newspaper. "Where?" "The blue car. Down the street." Bob casually walked to the mailbox, glancing at the vehicle. Tinted windows, engine running. He pulled out his phone and called Chen. "We might have a problem." Chen arrived in an unmarked car, but the blue vehicle was gone. "Could be nothing," she said. "Could be reporters." "Or," Bob prompted, "or Janet made bail." "You said she wouldn't get bail. She has expensive lawyers. And friends in high places." That night, they double-checked all the locks. Bob slept in the living room with his service weapon nearby. Duke, despite his injuries, positioned himself by Tommy's door. Nothing happened. The next day, Doctor Watson called. "Don't come to the clinic today." "Why?" Sarah asked. "Someone broke in last night, destroyed my files on Duke and Luna." "Janet!" "No proof. But who else would care about those specific files?" "They were trapped. Janet was out there, planning something, and they couldn't prove it. We need to be smarter," Tommy said that evening. He was sitting with the puppies, who were now a week old, their eyes just starting to open. "Duke says Janet always attacks when people are alone." "Duke says?" Sarah still struggled with Tommy's gift. "He remembers. From when she hurt Marcus." Bob leaned forward. "What else does Duke remember?" Tommy closed his eyes, his hand on Duke's head. "A storage unit, number 47. She keeps things there, bad things." Chen was skeptical when Bob called her. "I can't get a warrant based on a dog's memories." "Then don't. Just drive by, public property," Chen sighed. "Fine." An hour later, she called back. "You're not going to believe this. The storage unit is registered to Janet Stone. And there's blood on the door handle. Blood, fresh, like from today." The warrant came through in record time. What they found in the storage unit made even hardened officers sick. Dog-fighting equipment, blood-stained cages, and photographs. Dozens of them. Dogs that had been tortured, killed. "She's been doing this for years," Chen said. "This is enough to put her away for life." But Janet was nowhere to be found. "She's gone underground," Chen explained. "Probably knew we'd find the unit eventually." That night, Tommy couldn't sleep. He kept feeling something wrong. Duke was restless too, pacing despite his injuries. "What is it, boy?" Tommy whispered. Duke went to the window, growling low. Tommy looked out. The yard was empty, but Duke's growling intensified. "Grandpa," Tommy called softly. Bob was there in seconds. "What's wrong?" "Duke smells something, something bad." Bob grabbed his weapon and a flashlight. "Stay here." But Tommy followed anyway, Duke limping beside him. They found it in the barn, a can of gasoline tucked behind the door. "She's going to burn it," Tommy said with certainty. "Tonight?" Bob immediately called Chen. "We need units here now." "On the way." They waited, tense. Sarah had brought Luna and the puppies into the main house, away from the barn. Just after 2 a.m., Duke started barking. Not his warning bark, his attack bark. A figure in dark clothing was approaching the barn with something in their hand. "Police! Freeze!" Bob shouted. The figure turned. Even in the darkness, they could see Janet's face twisted with rage. "Those dogs killed my brother!" she screamed. "They deserve to burn!" She had a lighter in her hand. She flicked it. Duke moved faster than should have been possible with broken ribs. He launched himself at Janet, knocking her down before she could throw the lighter. Police sirens filled the air. Chen's units surrounded the property. Janet was arrested, screaming threats the entire time. "This isn't over! Those dogs are monsters! That boy is a freak!" Tommy stood in the doorway, tears streaming down his face, not from fear, but from sadness. "She's sick," he said quietly. In her mind, Duke can smell it, like rabies but for humans. Later, after Janet had been taken away, and the police finished their investigation, they all sat in the living room. Duke was being treated by Doctor Watson for his re-injured ribs. Luna nursed her puppies. "It's over," Sarah said, exhausted. "No," Tommy said. "It's just beginning." He was looking at the puppies. "They're special. Like Duke and Luna, they're going to help so many people." "How do you know?" Bob asked. Tommy smiled. "Duke told me, and Duke doesn't lie." Over the next weeks, word spread about what had happened. Veterans began calling, asking about the puppies. Some wanted to adopt, others wanted to help train them. One man in particular stood out. Staff Sergeant James Mitchell, who'd lost his leg in Afghanistan. "I heard about the boy who talks to dogs," he said when he visited. "Thought it was nonsense." Duke walked up to him, sat, and raised his paw to shake. "Nobody taught him that," Mitchell said, amazed. "Duke knows you're a soldier," Tommy explained. "He respects soldiers." Mitchell's eyes filled with tears. "My last dog died in the explosion that took my leg. Haven't been able to be around dogs since." "Duke says your dog's name was Ranger," Tommy said quietly. "He says Ranger was brave." Mitchell broke down completely. "How could you know that?" "Dogs remember other dogs' stories. They share them. It was impossible, unbelievable." But Mitchell looked into Duke's intelligent eyes and saw something there. Understanding, compassion, shared loss. Can I help train the puppies?" he asked. "Duke says yes," Tommy replied. And so their mission began. Not just to raise Luna's puppies, but to continue Marcus's work. To train service dogs for veterans who needed them. Tommy worked with Duke every day, learning the subtle cues that indicated PTSD episodes, panic attacks, nightmares. Duke was a patient teacher, demonstrating techniques despite his healing injuries. The puppies grew quickly. By 6 weeks, they were showing signs of their parents' intelligence and empathy. One puppy in particular, a male Tommy named Marcus, showed an unusual ability to sense emotional distress. "He's like you," Sarah told Tommy. "He knows things." Tommy nodded. "Duke says it runs in their bloodline. Some dogs are born to be healers." Dr. Watson had become a regular fixture in their lives, stopping by daily to check on the animals and help with training. Bob had noticed she stayed longer each visit, often joining them for dinner. "Emily," Bob said one evening, "why don't you just move in? You're here all the time anyway." She blushed. "I couldn't impose." "You're not imposing," Sarah said. "We need the help. And..." She glanced at Bob, who was trying to look casual. "Dad enjoys the company." Within a week, Emily had moved into one of the spare bedrooms, bringing her medical equipment and expertise. "We're becoming a real operation," she said, looking at the barn that was being converted into a proper training facility with the donations that continued to pour in. But Tommy knew something the adults didn't. He could feel it through Duke. More dogs were coming, dogs that needed help, dogs that had been hurt like Duke and Luna. "We need to get ready," he told Bob one morning. "For what?" "For the others. The ones Janet hurt. They're still out there." Bob studied his grandson. "How many?" Tommy closed his eyes, his hand on Duke's head. "Dozens, maybe more, hidden in places like that storage unit." "Chen is investigating," Bob said. "If there are more dogs..." "There are. Duke can feel them. They're calling for help." That afternoon, Chen called. "You're not going to believe this. We found another storage unit registered to shell companies connected to Janet, and another. We're up to 5 locations so far." "Are there dogs?" Bob asked. Not yet. But we found evidence. Fighting rings in 4 states. Tommy was right. There are dozens of dogs out there. The rescue operation that followed was massive. Federal agents got involved. Animal welfare organizations mobilized. And at the center of it all was a 5-year-old boy who somehow knew exactly where to look. "Turn left here," Tommy would say, sitting in Chen's unmarked car with Duke beside him. "There's a warehouse. Red door, dogs in the basement." He was always right. They found 17 dogs in the first week, all traumatized, all in need of medical care. "We can't take them all," Sarah said, overwhelmed. "We don't have to," Emily said, "but we can coordinate their care." And so, the house became a hub. Veterans arrived to meet dogs, trainers came to share techniques, and Tommy and Duke worked with the most traumatized animals, the ones everyone else had given up on, like Scar, a pit bull so aggressive that even experienced handlers wouldn't go near him. Tommy sat outside his cage for 3 hours, just talking. Duke lay beside him, occasionally whimpering or barking softly. "They're having a conversation," Mitchell observed. "The dogs are actually communicating." Finally, Tommy stood. "He's ready." "Tommy, no," Sarah said. "That dog is dangerous." "He's not dangerous. He's scared. Someone he loved hurt him. He doesn't understand why." Tommy opened the cage. Scar emerged slowly, his body tense, ready to attack. Duke stood, placing himself between Tommy and Scar. The 2 dogs stared at each other. Then Scar lowered his head and whimpered. "See?" Tommy said. He just needed someone to understand. Within a month, Scar was placed with a veteran who'd been betrayed by his unit in Iraq. They understood each other's trust issues. The puppies were 8 weeks old when the call came that would change everything. "Is this the boy who talks to dogs?" The voice was official, military. "Who's asking?" Bob said protectively. "General Patricia Hayes, Veterans Affairs. We've been following your work. We have a proposition." The general arrived 2 days later, in a black SUV with government plates. She was a small woman with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Show me," she said simply. Tommy demonstrated with Duke, then with Luna, then with each of the puppies. He showed how Duke could detect an oncoming panic attack in Mitchell before any visible signs, how Luna knew when Sarah's blood sugar was low, how the puppies were already showing signs of their parents' abilities. "Remarkable," the general said. "We want to fund a program, a national training center for service dogs. Here." "Here," Sarah said, stunned. "You have the land, the expertise, and most importantly," she looked at Tommy, "you have him." "I'm just a kid," Tommy said. "You're a kid with a gift that could help thousands of veterans." But Tommy was looking at Duke, who had gone rigid. Luna was growling low, her hackles raised. "What's wrong?" Bob asked. "Someone's here who shouldn't be," Tommy said. "Someone connected to Janet." The general security detail immediately went on alert. They spread out, searching the property. They found him in the woods behind the house. A man with a rifle, aimed at the barn where the puppies were playing. Janet's boyfriend, Chen identified him later. Out on bail for his own charges. Guess he wanted revenge. "How did the dogs know?" the general asked. Tommy shrugged. "They remember his smell from when he helped Janet hurt other dogs." "Bad people have a specific smell." The general made a decision on the spot. "We're providing security for this facility, and immunity for anyone involved in the rescue operations." "Immunity?" Bob asked. "Some of the methods used to find these dogs weren't strictly legal," the general said, glancing at Tommy. "Following a child's hunches based on dog communication isn't standard procedure, but it worked. And so, the Marcus Stone Memorial Training Center was officially born, the first national facility dedicated to training service dogs for veterans with PTSD, run by a 5-year-old boy who could talk to dogs, his family, and a growing team of believers. But Tommy knew this was bigger than just training dogs. Through Duke, he could feel a network of animals across the country, all connected, all communicating in ways humans had forgotten how to understand. "We're going to change the world," he told Duke one night as they sat watching Luna's puppies play. Duke barked once in agreement. The change started small but rippled outward like waves in a pond. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled every available seat, their cameras focused on the small boy sitting between 2 German shepherds. Tommy wore his only suit, the one Sarah had bought secondhand, and altered to fit. Duke sat on his right, Luna on his left, both dogs alert and protective. "Your Honor," Janet Stone's lawyer said, his voice dripping with false concern. "We're talking about a child who claims to communicate telepathically with animals. This is clearly a case of manipulation by adults seeking to profit from my client's family tragedy." Tommy felt Duke's anger like heat against his skin. He placed his small hand on the dog's neck, calming him. Judge Harrison, a stern woman with silver hair, looked over her glasses. "Mr. Fitzgerald, your client is facing charges of animal cruelty, attempted murder, and fraud. This hearing is about custody of the dogs, nothing more." "But, Your Honor, the testimony of a 5-year-old child who claims dogs tell him things—" "6," Tommy interrupted. Everyone turned to look at him. "I'm 6 now. My birthday was yesterday." A ripple of sympathy went through the crowd. Sarah squeezed his shoulder. "Tommy," Judge Harrison said gently, "would you like to tell me about Duke and Luna?" Tommy stood, which he didn't have to do, but Bob had taught him about respect. "Duke saved my mom's life. When those men tried to take us, Duke fought them, even though his ribs were broken. Luna's teaching her puppies to detect seizures. She learned that from Marcus." "Objection," Fitzgerald said. "The child can't possibly know what the dog is teaching." "I'll allow it," the judge said. "Continue, Tommy." Tommy looked directly at Janet, who sat at the defendant's table in an expensive suit, trying to look sympathetic. "She killed Marcus. Duke saw her put something in his drink. She locked Duke and Luna in the garage so they couldn't help when Marcus had his attack." "That's a lie," Janet burst out. "Miss Stone, control yourself," the judge warned. "Your Honor," Detective Chen stood from the gallery. "May I approach?" The judge nodded. Chen handed her a folder. "Security footage from the neighbor's camera. It shows Miss Stone's car at Marcus's house the night before he died. And this," Chen pulled out a receipt, "is for a sedative purchased by Ms. Stone the same day." Janet's lawyer whispered urgently in her ear. "Duke remembers the smell," Tommy said quietly. "The medicine smelled wrong. That's why he tried to knock the glass from Marcus's hand. But Janet hit him with a chair. Duke stood suddenly, his attention fixed on the courtroom door. Tommy felt it too. Something was coming. The doors burst open. A man in a wheelchair rolled in, followed by General Hayes and 6 other veterans. "Your Honor," the man said, "I'm Sergeant First Class Marcus Stone." The courtroom exploded. Janet went white. Even the judge looked shocked. "That's impossible," Janet stammered. "Marcus is dead. I saw the body." The man smiled grimly. "You saw my twin brother Martin. He died of an overdose 2 weeks ago. You thought he was me because you never bothered to really know either of us." Tommy felt Duke's joy like sunshine. The dog limped forward, tail wagging frantically. Luna followed, both dogs greeting the real Marcus with desperate affection. "I've been in a VA hospital in another state," Marcus explained, "recovering from a suicide attempt after Janet convinced me I was losing my mind. When I heard about what happened to my dogs, what this boy did to save them, I had to come forward. This is highly irregular," the judge said, but she was fighting a smile. "Your Honor," General Hayes stepped forward. "We have documentation proving Sergeant Stone's identity. We also have evidence that Miss Stone has been systematically targeting veterans with service dogs for years." "That's not true," Janet shouted. "Really?" Marcus turned his wheelchair to face her. "Then explain why you told me Duke and Luna were dead. Why you showed me fake photos of them being put down." The courtroom was silent. "You wanted me to kill myself," Marcus said quietly. "So you could take everything, including my dogs." Tommy walked over to Marcus, Duke, and Luna flanking him. "They never forgot you. Duke told me stories about you every night. How you saved him from a fighting ring. How you trained Luna from a puppy." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "How could Duke tell you anything?" Tommy shrugged. "I listen with something other than my ears. Duke says you can do it too, when your mind is quiet." Marcus looked at Duke, really looked at him. Something passed between them, invisible but real. "My God," Marcus whispered. "I can feel it. I can feel what he's thinking." "Objection," Fitzgerald said desperately. "This is turning into a circus." "Overruled," Judge Harrison said. "Miss Stone, do you have anything to say?" Janet stood, her composed mask finally cracking. "Those dogs are valuable, worth thousands as breeding stock. Why should some brat and his trashy family get them? The judge's expression hardened. I've heard enough. I'm ruling in favor of the current caregivers. Furthermore, I'm recommending additional charges be filed against Ms. Stone for attempted murder and fraud. No! Janet lunged toward Tommy. You ruined everything, you little freak. Duke and Luna moved as one, placing themselves between Janet and Tommy. But they didn't need to attack. Mitchell and 3 other veterans had already restrained her. Get her out of my courtroom, the judge ordered. As Janet was dragged away, still screaming, Tommy felt something shift. The fear that had lived in Duke and Luna since their trauma began was finally fading. Your Honor, Marcus said, I'd like to make a statement. The judge nodded. These dogs saved my life more times than I can count. When the nightmares came, Duke would wake me. When I couldn't leave the house, Luna would bring me her leash, forcing me to go outside. They were more than service animals. They were my family. He looked at Tommy. But I see now they have a new family. A better one. I'm signing over full custody to the Carters. And I'd like to help with their training program, if they'll have me. Tommy looked at his mother, then his grandfather, then at Emily, who stood with the other veterans. They all nodded. Duke and Luna say yes, Tommy said. But they want to visit you lots. Marcus laughed through his tears. I'd like that. 6 months later, the Marcus Stone Memorial Training Center was unrecognizable. What had started as a converted barn was now a full facility with medical equipment, training grounds, and housing for 20 dogs at a time. Tommy stood in the main training area, working with a young golden retriever named Hope. She'd been rescued from a puppy mill, traumatized and afraid of humans. Feel her fear, Tommy instructed Mitchell, who was learning his techniques. Don't think about it. Feel it. Mitchell closed his eyes, his hand on Hope's head. It's like cold, empty, lonely. Good. Now show her your feelings. The warm ones. It had taken months to teach the veterans Tommy's gift. Not everyone could do it, but those who could became extraordinary trainers. Marcus rolled up in his wheelchair, Duke walking beside him. We've got a new arrival. Bad case. They followed him to the intake, area where Chen stood with a Rottweiler that looked like it had been through hell. Scars covered its body. One eye was missing. Fighting ring in Detroit, Chen explained. Only survivor. The dog cowered in the corner, growling at anyone who approached. Tommy sat on the floor, not looking directly at the dog. Duke lay beside him. They waited. 20 minutes passed. 30. Finally, the Rottweiler took a tentative step forward. That's it, Tommy whispered. Duke's telling you we're safe. The dog crept closer, drawn by something invisible but powerful. When he finally reached Tommy, he collapsed, his head in the boy's lap, shaking. He's remembering being a puppy, Tommy said softly. Before the bad things happened, someone loved him once. Can he be saved? Chen asked. Tommy looked up, his green eyes bright with determination. They can all be saved. It just takes time. And love. And understanding. Over the next year, the center became famous, not just for its success rate, 94% of their dogs successfully placed with veterans, but for the mysterious methods that seemed to work miracles. Minutes with Tommy, the media called them, the time when the boy would sit with the most traumatized dogs and somehow reach them. But Tommy knew it wasn't magic. It was simply remembering what humans had forgotten, that all conscious beings are connected. That empathy is a language older than words. Luna's puppies had all been placed with veterans, but they stayed in touch. Each one had developed the ability to detect their human specific needs. Marcus Jr. could sense blood sugar changes. Liberty knew 30 seconds before a seizure. Justice detected nightmares before they fully formed. Their evolution, Doctor, Watson said one evening as they all sat for dinner. The next step in service animals. They're teachers, Tommy corrected, teaching us to listen again. The doorbell rang. Bob answered it to find a woman with a small child, maybe 3 years old. Is this where the boy who talks to dogs lives? She asked hesitantly. How can we help you? Sarah asked, joining Bob. My daughter, she's like your son. She knows things, feels things. The doctors say she's autistic, but I think it's more. Animals follow her everywhere. Birds land on her shoulders. Cats appear from nowhere. And she seems to understand them. Tommy appeared, Duke beside him. The moment he saw the little girl, his face lit up. She's like me, he said simply. But stronger. The girl looked at Duke and giggled. Duke's tail wagged, and he approached her slowly, gently. "Doggy says hello," the girl said clearly, though her mother gasped. "She hasn't spoken in 6 months." Tommy knelt beside the girl. "What's your name?" "Lily," she whispered. "The doggy says you're the teacher." "We can teach each other," Tommy said. And so the center evolved again. Not just training service dogs, but identifying and nurturing children with the gift. There were more than anyone had imagined. Kids who had been labeled as troubled, autistic, or strange, but who simply experienced the world differently. "It's like they're using parts of their brain we've forgotten about," Emily explained to a documentary crew that had come to film their work. "They perceive connections the rest of us miss." The documentary, titled "The Boy Who Speaks Dog," aired nationally. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of emails poured in. Parents with gifted children, veterans needing dogs, dogs needing rescue. But one email stood out. "There's a place in Montana," the message read. "Underground, dozens of dogs. Been there for years. I'm a guard, but I can't stand it anymore. Please help." Tommy read it and immediately felt Duke and Luna's agitation. "It's real," he said. "We have to go." "It could be a trap," Bob warned. "Janet still has friends out there." Duke says it's not. The man is honest. He's sick from keeping the secret. They organized carefully. Chen coordinated with federal agents. General Hayes provided military support. Emily prepared medical supplies for potentially dozens of dogs. The raid happened at dawn. Tommy stayed in the command vehicle, but Duke and Luna insisted on going with the agents. "They know how to find the hidden dogs," Tommy explained. What they found was worse than anyone imagined. 60 dogs in underground kennels. Some had been there for years. The operation was massive, connected to gambling rings across the country. But the dogs weren't just victims. They'd organized themselves, sharing food, protecting the weak. They'd formed their own pack, their own family. "They kept each other alive," Tommy said, tears streaming down his face as he watched the rescue on the monitors. "They never gave up hope." It took 3 days to remove all the dogs safely. Many needed immediate medical attention. Some were so traumatized they couldn't be touched. But Tommy worked with each one, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. Duke and Luna helped, bridging the gap between human and dog. "You're doing impossible things," a reporter told him. "No," Tommy replied. "I'm doing possible things that people forgot were possible." One dog in particular captured everyone's attention, a massive Tibetan Mastiff named Thunder, who'd been the champion fighter. Undefeated in over 50 fights, he was considered irredeemably vicious. But when Tommy approached his cage, Thunder did something unprecedented. He lay down and exposed his belly, the ultimate sign of submission and trust. "He's tired of fighting," Tommy explained. "He never wanted to hurt anyone. They made him." Thunder was placed with Marcus, who understood what it was like to be forced into violence. They healed together, 2 warriors finding peace. A year passed. The center had expanded to 3 locations across the country. Tommy, now 7, traveled between them with Duke and Luna, who, despite their age and injuries, insisted on continuing their work. But Tommy could feel Duke slowing down. The old injuries were catching up. "He's in pain," Tommy told Emily one evening. "He doesn't want me to know, but I can feel it." Emily examined Duke gently. "His arthritis is severe. The old fractures are causing problems. We can manage his pain, but he won't stop working," Tommy finished. "He says it's his purpose." Luna was struggling too. The pregnancy and her old injuries had taken their toll. "They need to retire," Sarah said gently. But Tommy shook his head. "They need to train their replacements first." And so began the search for the next generation. Not just Luna's puppies, who were already working, but new dogs with the gift. They found them in unexpected places. A street dog in Detroit who'd been guiding blind homeless people. A laboratory beagle who'd learned to detect cancer. A mixed breed from a shelter who knew when children were being abused. Each dog was paired with a veteran who had the gift of connection. The training was intense, revolutionary. "We're creating a new profession," General Hayes said during a visit. "Empathic service animals. It's changing everything we know about PTSD treatment." The program's success led to international attention. Requests came from Canada, England, Australia. Veterans everywhere needed these special dogs. "We can't help everyone," Sarah said, overwhelmed by the demand. "No," Tommy agreed, "but we can teach others to do what we do." And so, the training expanded again, not just dogs and veterans, but trainers from around the world coming to learn Tommy's methods. "Feel, don't think," he would tell them. "Hearts connect better than minds." Some thought it was mystical nonsense, but the results were undeniable. Dogs that had been deemed hopeless were rehabilitated. Veterans who'd given up on life found purpose. One morning, Tommy woke to find Duke couldn't stand. The great German Shepherd who'd saved so many was finally succumbing to his injuries. "No," Tommy cried, wrapping his arms around Duke's neck. Duke licked his face, and Tommy felt the message clearly. "It's okay. I'm ready." But Tommy wasn't ready. Duke had been his first connection, his bridge to understanding his gift. Emily came immediately. "We can make him comfortable," she said gently. "He wants to see the sunrise," Tommy said, "from the hill where we train." Bob carried Duke to the hill, the whole family following. Luna limped beside them, pressing close to her partner. As the sun rose, painting the sky pink and gold, Duke's breathing grew shallow. "Tell him," Tommy whispered to the assembled dogs and people. "Tell him what he means to us." One by one, they approached. Marcus spoke of how Duke had saved his life. Mitchell talked about learning to trust again. Each person and dog shared their gratitude. Duke's tail wagged weakly at each tribute. Finally, Tommy leaned close. "You taught me everything, how to listen, how to love, how to be brave." Duke looked into Tommy's eyes, and for a moment, the connection was perfect. Tommy saw himself through Duke's eyes. Not a strange child who talked to dogs, but a bridge between two worlds, a healer, a hope. Duke passed as the sun fully rose, surrounded by love. The funeral was attended by hundreds, veterans with their service dogs, families whose lives had been changed. Even Chen came, tears streaming down her usually stoic face. "He was more than a dog," Marcus said at the service. "He was a teacher, a warrior, a friend." Luna mourned deeply, refusing to eat for days. But slowly, with Tommy's help, she found purpose in training the new dogs, passing on Duke's wisdom. 3 months later, Luna joined Duke. She went peacefully in her sleep, Tommy beside her. "They're still here," Tommy told his grieving family, "in every dog they trained, in every life they saved." The work continued. The center was renamed the Duke and Luna Institute for Empathic Animal Training. Tommy, though still young, was recognized as the world's leading expert in human-animal communication. "It's not a gift," he would tell audiences. "It's a skill. We all have it. We just need to remember how to use it." By his 10th birthday, Tommy had personally trained over 300 dogs and taught dozens of people his methods. The ripple effects were immeasurable. Suicide rates among veterans dropped in areas where the dogs were placed. Children with autism found ways to communicate through animals. Abuse victims found healing in the unconditional love of rescued dogs. But Tommy knew the work was far from over. In quiet moments, he could feel them. Thousands of dogs still suffering, still waiting for rescue. "We'll find them all," he promised Duke and Luna's graves, where fresh flowers were placed daily by grateful veterans. Every last one. One evening, as Tommy sat in the barn reviewing applications for new dogs, Lily, the little girl who'd arrived years ago, ran in. "Tommy, come quick, there's a dog." He followed her to the road, where a skeletal German Shepherd stood, barely able to remain upright. Tommy approached slowly. The dog looked at him with eyes that seemed familiar. "Oh my God," Emily breathed. "He looks just like Duke." The dog wore a collar with a single word: hope. Tommy knelt, and the dog crawled to him, collapsing in his arms. "He's Duke's son," Tommy said with certainty, "from before Duke was rescued. He's been looking for his father." They brought Hope inside, tended his wounds, fed him carefully. As he recovered, his resemblance to Duke became more pronounced. The same intelligent eyes, the same protective instinct, the same gift for understanding. "He wants to continue Duke's work," Tommy explained. And so, Hope became Tommy's new partner, learning from Luna's puppies and the other trained dogs. The cycle continued. Years passed. Tommy grew from a gifted child into a remarkable young man, still able to connect with animals in ways that seemed impossible. The Institute expanded globally. The Methods he'd developed became standard practice in service animal training, but Tommy never forgot that night in the storm when he first heard crying from the barn, the night that changed everything. Every connection matters, he would tell new trainers. Every rescue changes the world a little bit. We just have to listen. On the 5th anniversary of Duke and Luna's rescue, they held a celebration at the Institute. Thousands attended, veterans with their dogs, families who'd been reunited, children who'd found their voices. General Hayes, now retired, gave a speech. When I first heard about a boy who could talk to dogs, I thought it was nonsense. But I've learned that the impossible is just what we haven't understood yet. Tommy and Duke and Luna have taught us that connection transcends species, that love is a universal language, that healing is always possible. Marcus, now walking with a cane instead of using a wheelchair, added, "Duke and Luna didn't just save my life. They gave me a reason to live. And Tommy showed me how to hear what they'd been trying to tell me all along, that I was worthy of love, that my trauma didn't define me, that hope exists even in the darkest places." Tommy, now 15, stood to speak. Hope sat beside him, along with a dozen other dogs in training. "Duke and Luna taught me that every living being has a voice," he said. "Some speak with barks, some with whimpers, some with silence. But they all have something to say. They all have love to give. They all deserve to be heard." He paused, looking out at the crowd. "People ask me how I talk to dogs. The truth is I don't talk to them. I listen. And if you listen, really listen, you'll hear them too. They're telling us about loyalty, about unconditional love, about resilience. They're teaching us to be better humans." "Duke once showed me a memory," Tommy continued. "The night he was rescued from the fighting ring. He was broken, bleeding, afraid. But when Marcus reached out his hand, Duke made a choice. He chose to trust again. That choice changed everything. For Duke, for Marcus, for Luna, for my family, for everyone here. We all have that choice, every day, to trust, to love, to help, to listen." He looked at the cameras broadcasting the event globally. "Somewhere out there, right now, there's a dog in a cage, hoping someone will hear them. There's a veteran struggling with nightmares, needing a companion who understands. There's a child who sees the world differently, looking for acceptance. We can be the answer to their hopes. We can be the rescue they're waiting for. We just have to listen." The crowd erupted in applause, but Tommy wasn't finished. Duke and Luna's legacy isn't just the dogs they trained or the lives they saved. It's the reminder that connection is possible between all living things. That empathy is our greatest strength. That love transcends species, trauma, even death. He knelt beside Hope, his hand on the dog's head. "So, I ask you, will you listen? Will you help? Will you be part of this legacy?" The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in. Volunteer applications flooded the website. New chapters of the Institute opened in 12 countries within a year. But for Tommy, the greatest victory was smaller, quieter. It was the moment when a traumatized dog first trusted a human again, when a veteran smiled for the first time in years, when a child discovered they weren't alone in their gift. "We're all connected," he would say. "Dogs just remember it better than we do." As the sun set on that anniversary day, Tommy stood at Duke and Luna's graves with Hope beside him. The cemetery had grown. Other service dogs were buried here now, heroes in their own right. "You started something amazing," he whispered to the stones, "something that will outlive us all." Hope barked once, softly, and Tommy smiled. In that bark, he heard Duke's strength and Luna's gentleness. He heard the echo of every dog they'd saved, every life they'd changed. "I know," he said to Hope. "They're still with us. They always will be." As they walked back to the Institute, Tommy saw a new family arriving with a rescued German shepherd, the dog cowering but curious. Another chance for healing, another opportunity for connection. "Welcome," Tommy said, kneeling to the dog's level. "You're safe now? And we're going to teach you something amazing, how to save a human's life by letting them save yours." The dog's tail wagged tentatively. The beginning of trust, the start of another miracle. Because that's what Duke and Luna had taught them all, that miracles aren't rare, supernatural events. They're the daily choice to love, to trust, to connect across the barriers that seem to separate us. Every rescued dog was a miracle. Every healed veteran was a miracle. Every child who found their voice was a miracle, and it all started with a 5-year-old boy who heard crying in a storm and chose to listen. The work continues today. The Duke and Luna Institute has trained over 10,000 service dogs. The waiting list is long, but no veteran in true need is turned away. Tommy, now an adult, still has the gift. He's taught hundreds of others to develop their own connection with animals. Scientists study his methods. Universities offer courses based on his teachings. But at heart, it remains simple. Listen, feel, connect, love. Because that's what Duke and Luna knew all along. That love is the most powerful force in the universe. It transcends species, overcomes trauma, and creates bonds that death itself cannot break. Their story reminds us that heroes come in all forms. Sometimes they're German shepherds with broken legs. Sometimes they're small boys who hear what others cannot. Sometimes they're ordinary people who choose to do extraordinary things. We all have the capacity to be heroes, to rescue and be rescued, to heal and be healed, to love and be loved. Duke and Luna's legacy lives on. Every service dog working today, in every veteran who chose life because a dog understood their pain, in every child who learned that being different is a gift, not a curse. But most of all, it lives on in the simple truth they taught us, that when we truly listen to each other, human and animal alike, we discover we're not alone. We're all connected, we're all family, and family never gives up on each other. So, the next time you see a dog, remember Duke and Luna. Remember Tommy. Remember that connection is always possible, that understanding transcends words, that love is the universal language. Listen with your heart. You might be surprised by what you hear, because somewhere, in a barn or a shelter or a cage, there's a soul waiting to be heard, waiting to be rescued, waiting to rescue you in return. The circle of healing continues, one connection at a time, and it all started with 2 German shepherds trapped in a broken wheelbarrow and a little boy brave enough to answer their cry for help. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in the power of connection between humans and animals, please like and share this video. Comment below with your own stories of amazing animals who've changed your life. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible true stories of hope, healing, and the unbreakable bonds that connect us all. Together, we can spread awareness about the importance of service animals and the veterans who need them. Every share could help connect a veteran with a life-saving companion. Thank you for watching, and remember, listen with your heart.